Are you muted, Fat Steven?
I think he is. I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, because I can't hear anything.
Okay, I thought I was the only one, so I was playing along.
I was going to see how long it would take.
Well, welcome to Fat Steven's show. We've got Grim here. I guess I'll just start talking while he figures out his mic. How is everyone doing this morning?
Don't ask.
Welcome to my boomerish, because my foot stepped on the cable and unplugged it, and I was talking the whole time. I am not restarting this intro, but thank you for coming to a cancel culture series. Today we have Grim Jim, Grimasaur, and his lovely beard. With us today we have White Keith, Yeti Cass, Rowan Ginger Raven, and of course myself, stepping on cords and breaking crap. So seriousness is already out the door. How are you doing today, Grim? Is it morning, afternoon, or you don't care?
It's afternoon, but it feels like morning because I had a late one. So
I did too as well. Panel, how are you guys doing today? Thank you for coming here. The only person we're missing is the one man who set this up, so I hope he's okay.
I'm doing good. Feeling a little tired. Got a bad hair day going.
Yeah. Oh, that sucks. But yeah, today's going to be like we do with other things. We're going to be talking about cancel culture and how it's affected Grim. T-shirt, who's not here, introduced us about a couple weeks back, and we set this interview up. And I thought, let's give him a voice. Let's hear his story and how it's affected him and how he's going about it. So, Grim, where would you like to start off? And I don't want to pressure you.
Well, yeah, for all the fun and games, it's quite a serious topic, but I'm not entirely sure where to start. Background, I suppose.
Well, you can start who you are, what you do, and how they came and why they came after. If you want to go from there, you can go. It's all up to you, man.
Okay. I'm James Desborough. I go by Grim, have done since college. I'm a game designer in primarily the tabletop RPG sort of space, but I've done some story work on some apps, other bits and pieces here and there. I also dabble in fiction. I've worked on some card games, board games. I freelanced for a lot of the big tabletop RPG companies, including Wizards of the Coast, Steve Jackson Games, Mongoose Publishing, back when they were a thing. I've been involved in games and creative enterprises since I was 8 or 9, really, and professionally since 98, 99, around there somewhere. Mm-hmm. I run my own game production self-employment thing called Postmortem Studios and produce a lot of stuff and sort of mentor people who want to get into publishing as well. So
you always had that glorious beard.
Yes, I was born with it, which was rather inconvenient and quite painful for all concerned.
That's pretty awesome. Do you know what inspired you to get into all that kind of stuff, like having your own company, like becoming an author? I perused through your tags of your website, so stuff. So I know you dabble in everything.
Well, I always loved games since I first picked them up. It's just it's unparalleled in the amount of freedom and creativity you can do, even if you're just playing and not producing things commercially. But I always wanted to do something creative. I vacillated between comic books or art, illustration. That didn't work out as it happened. Writing, but gaming was always my first love. Tabletop games. I was working in tech support and web design when the .com bubble burst. And a combination of that and my boss embezzling the firm put me out of work.
Are you serious?
Oh,
I'm
wow.
serious.
I'm surprised you didn't make a tabletop about that. Your whole mission is to get out of the company with as much as your stipend as possible.
Yeah. He was embezzling and blaming our department in the way he filled out the books. So he kept his job, which is even worse.
Oh, how did that happen?
I don't know. Maybe had some dirt on the boss or something.
He must have.
Yeah, so I'd already been doing some freelance stuff on the side, like side hustle, side gig, and so on. And then I was out of work for 18 months because there was no work for any of my skills that I had anywhere at that time. And in the end, I just decided, fuck it, and decided to branch out for myself.
I will give one thing. I did do like a lot of college stuff with IT, especially network engineering, and it bored the crap out of me. It does. It bores the crap out of me. Like, I got this degree, and all I can see it as a bounty paper towel at this point. I don't care. But yeah,
it's the web design part was fun apart from the customers. So yeah,
that's cool. So was that the trigger point when you started doing your own stuff? Is that how it started coming to where you came now, or no?
I'd done some sort of fan work in the early 90s, just sort of photocopied fanzines and things, which hadn't really amounted to much, but I got the bug then. But the impetus to actually produce my own stuff was being out of work for so long.
That's cool. So how did you get from the embezzling boss, that's a good title for a book, to becoming a target of cancel culture? How'd that happen?
So I've always been kind of part of the sort of edgier scenes. So yeah, punk, metal, industrial music, going clubbing in London, fetish clubs sometimes, stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to guess polka.
Don't worry about Yeti. We picked him up actually in a fetish club. He likes shaving weird areas. It's real awkward.
No.
It is. You can hear him blushing, and the buzzer in the background.
So you dress up as mythological creatures. So you're a crypto furry, is that?
Yeah, that's what he is. Yeah. He actually is a Yeti that dresses up like a Wampa because he loves Star Wars so much.
Yeah, it's cosplay. It pays the bills,
There's layers there that I do not wish to plumb.
We will eventually have to invite you back for the shitting on Yeti show.
So yeah, that's always been part of my interest. So creative edge and the kind of fiction that I liked, horror, science fiction, dealing with ideas that you don't necessarily hold yourself, but which are interesting to peruse. Like some of my favorite stories ever are the collections of science fiction stories that Harlan Ellison put together, Dangerous Visions. I don't know if you're familiar with those. But yeah, Harlan Ellison was a notorious curmudgeon who upset everybody. So having him as a model perhaps wasn't necessarily the best choice, but his ideas were always fascinating to me. And a lot of that kind of semi-transgressive, dystopian, drug-fueled science fiction of the 70s and 80s, that was my jam. So when I started producing stuff for myself, obviously you choose to write about things that you know and which interest you and impassion you. And so I naturally gravitated towards edgy material, not to be an edgy boy just to upset people or whatever, just because that's where my passion lies. That's what I think is interesting. And I think role-playing games, inhabiting someone else who doesn't necessarily have the same morality or outlook or whatever as you have, I think that's an important life skill.
Yeah.
And it's fun and interesting to imagine these worlds, and to explore truly different mindsets and perspectives.
I think I get what you're saying. You have a love for not only having an imagination and sharing it, but going not only to like the normal common social imagination, but going to the fringes of those galaxies and universes and seeing how far you can push it, as well as enjoy it without making people feel like they have to as well, but they can still respect it.
Yeah, and that used to be something that was very possible and very welcomed in the gaming space. My sort of point of view wasn't taken as being a sort of adolescent shock value necessarily, in not trying to be Blackie Lawless from Wasp or whatever, but it was more seen as the kind of mature way to handle this and to examine different ideas. And the gaming space was always very anti-censorship and very anti-moral panic. So as I came up, I lived through the Satanic Panic and how that affected Dungeons and Dragons in particular.
One second. I'm sorry. We have a late arrival. You can accost him now if you want. Welcome, T-shirt historian.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going. You're late.
I know. I'm sorry.
I thought you were up
my
for
breakfast. I'm up for it. I've got a headache, but I'm up for it.
Was everyone hungover? Did we all do the same thing last night, but just different places? What is this?
I think so.
Actually, I was up most of the night watching Grimm. Actually, but
in preparation.
In preparation, yes, I was.
Cool.
Yeah, I have to say I'm a fan. So, but that's what kind of pushed me to want to talk to you anyway. Because cancel culture is a virus, and the tabletop role-playing game industry has always been a big thing for me. I mean, I've been playing tabletop games for 37 years now. I've helped write a few, I've helped illustrate a few, and to hear someone else's experience who's actually been canceled in the industry, that's kind of heartbreaking. I mean, because Grimm's not just like some low cheese, fly by night tabletop role playing gamer. This is a guy who writes for, who used to write for Wizards of the Coast and some of the other big brands. And when you hit that holy grail of tabletop role playing game writing and illustrating, that's kind of like you hit the top. You've made it. You're big time, and then
bounced off.
Yeah, it's.
I'm sorry. He skipped right ahead to the butt kissing segment of the show. I apologize. Just messing with the T-shirt.
You got a little something on your nose.
Yeah.
I'll give T-shirt credit, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't actually have met or been talking to Grimm right now. So he did actually set this up. So he does get a lot of respect for this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, in a way, Grimm is almost kind of, to me, I mean, he's almost the Lucifer of tabletop role-playing games, because he fell from grace and has made a new kingdom.
All of my own.
Yeah. Of your own, yes. With
Down in the
hookers
dark
and
with
beer.
deviants. Yeah.
With hookers and beer.
Okay. But getting back to your story, you can continue on, because I think people that are somewhat watching don't know of you as well, but I think they're willing to hear what's going on.
Cool.
Cool.
So as I was saying, I came up through tabletop gaming when it was being treated particularly badly. People were trying to censor it. There were even book burnings and bullshit like that. So I came up through the Satanic Panic, the smaller Vampire Panic, when Vampire the Masquerade was big, and there were those killings in Florida. It's always Florida.
Yeah.
And lots of panic about people drinking each other's blood and so on. nonsense like that, which hardly any of it happened. That was a fringe of a fringe of a fringe, but that was the story. So White Wolf came under a lot of pressure. Actually, I did an interview myself with Mark Reinhagen a while back, and it was
He's a
interesting.
sweet guy.
He's a sweet dude. But it was interesting to see his perspective from the inside when they were under attack. And to me, watching it from outside, it didn't feel like they were capitulating to the panic and the fuss. But actually, from what he told me, it seems like they did back down quite a bit to the panic because they were so worried about the effect it was having on their business. But certainly from the outside, that wasn't the perspective I had. And then in computer games, you had the whole Jack Thompson era. If you want to go back before my time, there was the whole seduction of the innocent around comic books and how they were leading the youth astray and all that. And I was aware of all this coming up. And the gaming space was really fiercely anti-censorship the entire time I was coming up through it. Something changed around, for me, I first noticed it around 2010. I'd produced an adult card game called Tentacle, which was kind of making fun of all the tropes around hentai and so on, tentacles, all of that. Yeah. It's quite explicit, but this was a niche product. I made it completely obvious that this was something that was very adult and that you shouldn't buy it if you were going to be offended at all. And yet they, I got a female artist to do the art because at the time I was more kind of, I guess, sensitive and wanting to be somewhat accommodating to the people on the other side, which looking back was probably a mistake because there's no satisfying them.
No.
But while most people got the joke, that was when I really first started noticing some sort of backlash, which started on a site called RPGNet, which isn't as relevant as it used to be, but it used to be the absolute hub of online tabletop gaming discussion and advertising and so on. And I took a bit of a beasting from some of the commentators on there over it, saying the most absurd and ridiculous things like, this is fetishized child rape and things like that, which it absolutely wasn't. I mean, they're drawings for one thing, and all the characters were 18 or over, and it was very much tongue in cheek or tentacle between cheeks, I guess. But the reaction was just absurd. But it was still limited to a relatively small number of people, and they had no real pull or power at the time. They raised a fuss, but it didn't go anywhere. I was selling it through Drive-Thru RPG, which is like the biggest electronic book RPG site sales point, and there wasn't a problem, though it was much later, censored off Drive-Thru RPG when the culture had changed more. But that was my first real inkling.
Yeah.
My first major professional outing was the Munchkin's Guide to Power Gaming, which went on to spawn Munchkin, the card game, board game, all the rest of it. Though I don't see a penny in residuals from anything that was derived from it.
Isn't that a shit? I mean, yeah, that's a big game, and there's still so many Munchkin products going on. I mean, just last year I saw they had some kind of a Munchkin Kickstarter going for miniatures and shit, and I'm just kind of like, man, who'd have thought that this property would have taken off so big? And you didn't get shit from any of that, huh?
I got paid for the original book along with my writing partner. But the contract was shit. But it was my first real professional work in the industry.
Can I ask you?
So you didn't feel like you had any leverage.
Yeah.
No.
Can I ask you a question though, Grim? You say that was like your first inclination. Do you remember can you realize, or did you realize how fast it would have changed and evolved into the way that its toxicity is now compared to, like, saying your view from 2010? Was it like a tsunami, or was it like a slow buildup over, let's say, the last decade?
It was kind of like how COVID spread. It's exponential. So it seems sort of low level at the start, and you don't think too much of it after all you've been through all this before.
Yeah.
But it built rapidly over the next few years. And as well as living through all these moral panics, I also lived through the first peak of the kind of PC culture in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
When you couldn't call someone disabled, they were differently abled.
Oh God, I hate that terminology.
Mm-hmm. It's still with us.
It is still with us.
It's
now
different.
It took steroids.
Yeah,
It took steroids.
And the language has shifted again. But that only lasted 3-4 years, really, where it was really impactful, and then it was gone. But this has been going on a lot longer now, depending where your starting point is. I mean, arbitrarily, I would say 2010 for me is when I really noticed it. So at this point, it's twice as long as the 90s sort of PC peak. So I don't know when this is going to stop. I think social media is feeding it and sustaining it.
It is in a way, and I think Twitter is a main cause of it. I think it's a cesspool of growth for them, and I think it's that 1% to 2% of those types of people that not only look for something to cancel. Once you remember the old movie The Blob, right? That always kept consuming and always kept eating. This is the way cancel culture works, especially when it comes to Twitter. They will absorb. They will just eat, and then they'll move on to the next. But they never get to the point where they're satisfied. So it kind of fits like The Blob. They're always going after the next thing to consume, and they don't care who or what they go after. Yeah. They'll even turn it on themselves because they have no morals. They just want to hurt everything around them.
Well, they don't even know what they're trying to cancel. Like most of the time, they don't do any research beyond some tweet that they see up online. Like, oh, we have to go after this guy because XYZ, and half the time it's wrong. Like it always comes out that it was totally misconstrued or the facts weren't correct.
Well, they
took out Aunt Jemima.
They live in.
They took out Uncle Ben. They took out the native on the butter.
Those I don't understand, especially Aunt Jemima, because that was in every household. That's something that was extremely well known, and the story of like the Aunt Jemima, the model is rather remarkable, and even the family was upset, like extremely upset about this.
Yeah, she was a symbol of success, actually, and they took it away.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they just erase someone. It's like the exact opposite of what you should be doing. They should want more. Like I remember seeing Aunt Jemima as a kid, like, oh, that's the syrup I want. When I see that face, I know it's going to be good.
It's a trusted brand.
Yes,
a trusted brand, much like the Uncle Ben's rice.
Well, I'm going to deny a little thing right there. Like honestly, if I walked into my kitchen and there was a 7-foot tall talking syrup bottle, I would have some concerns at this point.
That was Mrs. Butterworth, I think.
Either way, it's just I'm getting them confused. They're both syrupy and delicious.
Liquid sugar, man. Who put pizza?
Well, actually, Steven, to kind of put it into a gaming parlance, I kind of see it as as what we would call the gelatinous cube. It's a creature that basically it scours dungeons and it eats everything in sight. But the worst part is that all the stuff that it's eaten, it kind of displays because it's locked inside of its body. So you can actually see the dead corpses and stuff floating around inside of it while it eats everything. And that's kind of how the cancel culture is to me, is because, they cancel somebody and then it's like they hold them up as a trophy. Like, look, I have bested this dragon.
Constant reminder of what you've lost to the oozing horde.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But now that we're going to this, when did they start coming after you?
So I think it was 2012 or 2013. So the sort of very start of the likes of Anita Sarkeesian criticizing computer games from a feminist standpoint or through a feminist filter. I don't want to get sidetracked, so I won't talk about how redundant and stupid problematization is. But pareidolia, when you go looking for something, you're going to find it, even if it isn't there. It's
like Boob Armor. Yes, we know about her. She's made it numerous times. The last one I think was Boob Armor from The Mandalorian, and I'm like, you're an idiot.
Yeah. Anyway, so there was a big hoopla around the reboot of the new Lara Croft. And in one of the trailers, there was a scene where it looked like she was trapped and she was about to be sexually assaulted, though it only ever sort of faded to black. But, you know, there was sort of leery rape guy sort of leaning in towards her in the trailer. And this kicked off a huge discussion. Oh, this shouldn't be there. It's disempowering to the hero, blah, blah, blah. Even though you never see anything and you don't actually lose because the game resets and you can try again until you manage to get away or kill him or whatever. But to me, this was kind of outrageous. They were demanding huge changes to the game purely on the basis of what the content was, not how it was approached, not how it was executed. Yeah, this is all subjective anyway. But just the mere inclusion of the threat of sexual assault or whatever, some kind of disempowering of the hero, just that was enough for them to demand that the game was changed or be censored or whatever. And I'm looking at my bookshelf and I'm seeing things like Stephen Donaldson's Ill Earth War, which basically starts with a rape, and that's the hero, and that's because he doesn't believe the world is real, and that's like the whole kickoff there. Or I'm reading Robin Hobb's books, Live Ship Traders, where sexual abuse is really important and integral to one of the female characters in that book. And I think Robin Hobb is a woman. I'm not sure. This is fodder for stories. Stories occur where there is conflict, there is harm, where you overcome something, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, fat is where the flavor is, conflict and difficulty is where the story is. Why would you remove that potential tool from your toolbox? Why would you take that crayon out of your crayon set and no longer use that color? You've got to be creative. You've got to be able to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to do stuff that some people won't like, and you've got to be as unrestricted as possible in what you do. So I wrote an article. In hindsight, choosing a clickbait title wasn't the best idea. The title was In Defense of Rape, and it was going to be a series of articles that was going to be in defense of torture, in defense of murder. I was going to talk about how all of these things are important and interesting story fodder, and how we shouldn't restrict ourselves from having access to those things, because we want to tell these stories, and these kind of stories can be important, but we can't censor it, I don't believe, even when someone fucks up implementing one of these plot threads, because you've got to be free to fuck up.
I had a question. So what you're trying to say, if I'm understanding this right, is that even the most outlandish to some people's topics is not only a device of having a character creation. If it's going to make you uncomfortable, that means you're doing it right, and it's making the person think, because then the person has to check themselves on why it's making them comfortable. But if they turn off that show or turn off that channel, they're not helping themselves understand why it's uncomfortable and why they're not willing to listen. So I get that's the kind of like the toolbox right there.
And plus, when it comes to media, you're always in control of what media you consume. You don't have to read the book, play the game, watch the film. You can switch it off. You can turn away. It can't be forced on you.
No.
So what is the point of censoring it or restricting other people's expression?
Power.
And whether they do it well or not, also that's so subjective. You can't just decide that one person's implementation of using these plot themes is okay because they approach it in a way that you like and that you want to see done, and someone else you want to censor for exploring the exact same material just because you think their approach is puerile or disrespectful or whatever. Those are subjective judgments. Mm-hmm. So you can't do that without being a hypocrite. So right. I tried to make all these kind of salient, nuanced points about, we should be able to have stories about bad things. Bad things should be able to happen to characters, and that this is often where the meat of a story is, the things that engage you with the character and their struggles, and you want to see them succeed, or you want to establish a villain, so they do something villainous, and then everyone's against them.
Yeah, isn't that one of the biggest issues with literature and gaming and movies these days? Is they do not want to see a character struggle at all, and they get offended when the bad guy acts bad. How do you set up a story when there's nothing to overcome? Because then you're just limited to someone who's perfect, and perfect is boring. There's nothing to explore when somebody already has completed their character arc.
Yeah, and when a villain can't do something villainous, because if you write a villain who does something villainous, somehow they will assume that you, as the writer or the game creator or whatever, are endorsing what the villain does, which is
See, what I'm trying to understand, Grim, and everyone on the panel, is like, okay, what is the difference between writing that in fiction or a story than having someone doing their memoirs that has the same type of content? Why is one accepted more over the other when it's exactly the same, only it's a real person over a fictional?
Because honestly, Stephen, I think the memoirs is more of a cry for victimhood.
Yeah,
that sounds like
I think it's because there's an embrace of subjectivity in these kind of critical standpoint theories, right? Which fundamentally goes against what I believe and what I want when it comes to factual material. Like, it doesn't matter that you have an anecdote that someone was racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever towards you. That's an individual case. It can't tell us anything about the broader society unless we look at it statistically and we do proper scientifically controlled surveys and so on. I care about what's true. That doesn't mean I don't care what has happened to you individually and your lived experience, as they say. It's just, I can be sympathetic, I can be a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen to what's happened to you. But we can't run society on that. We need to know the facts. We need to know how widespread something is.
Yeah. Do you find the word systemic being attached to certain things being overly used and it actually has no meaning if there's no actual data for that to be used?
It's complicated because, like a lot of what they talk about, there's this grain or nub of truth to it all. It's just they blow it out of all proportion. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you might say, "Oh, Black people, for example, have a harder time of it in our society," and they will then immediately conclude that this must be because of racism. But there can be all kinds of other problems, like a lack of historical social mobility, which doesn't only affect the African American or the Afro-Caribbean community. It also affects poor whites. It's
Mexicans,
it's just disproportionate in racial minorities because a large proportion of them are immigrants. Historically, they have been oppressed and treated badly, even if that doesn't necessarily continue to today. So the trouble with this idea of systemic isms is that nobody involved actually has to be racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever. They will claim that the system is, even though nobody within that system is actually acting with any kind of prejudicial thought. There's a grain of truth to that as well. In large organizations like corporations or the military or so on, often they're so big and so sprawling that nobody has to take any responsibility for what's going on, and nobody has an overall view of how things work. So nobody within that organization can necessarily mean to be an horrible cunt. But the corporation as a sort of eusocial entity, like an anthill or something, can still devour a cow, theoretically, metaphorically speaking, without any individual ant or corporate employee being responsible. So again, there's a grain of truth there. It's taken too far.
Well, no one in those organizations knows what the other side is doing within their own organization. I know. I think it was Starbucks had this issue where they're having all these things produced, but the people at the top didn't know where they were sourcing everything because it would be too much information for one person to handle because it's simply too big. So they delegate, and then those people screw up, and then it takes a long time before they learn what actually happened.
or like Apple that likes to present itself as this kind of ethical, woke company, and yet they're using Chinese sweatshops to produce iPhones where people are throwing themselves off the roof because they can't take it anymore.
It's okay. They put up a net to catch them now.
Oh, that's okay.
Disney and the Mulan set, we can go down that road too, because like, hey, they even thanked the area, and I was like, you really need to stop making your credit. Whoever's making your credits needs to have a proofreader at this point.
Yeah. So anyway, from that long digression into social insect theory and things. So after that article came out, most people didn't read past the headline, in defense of rape. They didn't actually read the article. They didn't try to understand what I was saying. They just saw the word rape and that was it. They were away to the races. And petitions were organized to try and make sure that all of these companies that I'd worked for before wouldn't employ me again. So there were these massive petitions with the automated mailing going to Wizards of the Coast, to Steve Jackson Games, to Mongoose Publishing. They were telling companies that hadn't worked with me not to employ me in the future because I held these regressive views. And I was also getting absolutely inundated with hate mail, threats against me, threats against my wife, threats to kill my pets.
Wow.
The virtue.
Yeah, and this is coming from the people who consider themselves to be
the greater good.
Yeah, on the right side of everything.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't really understand that the culture had shifted that much. Because to me, the side of the RPG community that I was in was still very definitely anti-censorship. Most people still backed me up on this point at the time. One of the people who had been setting up the surveys withdrew after they heard about the threats that were being made to my partner. So I kind of got away with it, I think, that first time. Most of the companies that were affected by this petition either didn't say anything or said they didn't think that what they were saying was true of me. Back me up on what I said the content of the article was. I still didn't work for any of those companies again, regardless of what they were saying in public.
Do you feel better that you never worked for those companies again, or do you still feel like you missed out? Or is that a double-edged sword?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of double-edged. I wouldn't want to work with people who wouldn't look after their employees, even if they're freelance, who wouldn't have their back. Certainly, I always try to have the back of people that I work with. That hasn't always been necessarily reciprocated, which has been quite hurtful later on when people have come after me. So, and it's let me concentrate on my own stuff. So I have a smaller audience now. But by and large, they're people who understand what I'm trying to do, and that's worth a lot. The increased freedom and not having any boss or editor. Now that's a two-edged sword because editors can be useful, but I'm free to pursue my own ends. The top, well, almost free. It's getting to the point where you can't sell stuff that some people consider problematic, but that's a whole separate can of worms.
Okay.
I gotta say that kind of pulling it back to what you were saying earlier about the whole villain narrative and people not wanting to see it. I think I was about 7 when Empire Strikes Back came out, and the first time I saw it in the theater, I came away from that movie just feeling absolutely horrified by it. Luke got his hand cut off. Han Solo's in carbonite. They kind of left it on a cliffhanger. All the characters got tortured, mangled and stuff in the film. I mean, they actually got hurt for the first time in the film. And that horrified me as a 7-year-old. But as I got a little bit older, I looked back at the film and realized this fucking movie was brilliant because as much as I was invested in the film, in the characters from Star Wars, this film totally invested me in the characters because I was feeling the pathos, the suffering of the characters, and that made me relate to them even more. That made me love them even more, and it made me realize the genius behind that second film. And I think a lot of the people these days in gaming, one of the big changes from the old school to the new school is old school rules, were hardcore. I mean, it's like you'd go into the dungeon, you'd get characters killed or maimed or fucked up beyond recognition by, hitting some cursed items or whatever. I mean, and it was kind of the expected norm. You just kind of rolled with the punches. You got another character ready to go, and you were ready to go like within 30 minutes. And this is kind of how it played out. We were used to it. It happened. Killer DMs existed. Killer dungeons existed. In fact, most of the old original D&D dungeons are just fucking meat processors for characters. I don't know what else you could call them, because they just kill characters left, right, and center. But as the games have progressed over the years, there's been more of an emphasis on story and character development, and it takes longer to build characters, and characters have more ways to avoid death or minimize deleterious effects on their characters, or to just completely cancel them totally. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 different versions of Raised Dead, Resurrection, True Resurrection, and then of course I mean, so character death doesn't even mean what it used to. And I've always argued with people. I've said, clerics are fucking busted, because if you lived in a society that had people who could bring people back from the dead, and all it cost you was money, the rich would never die, ever.
That's kind of like the American healthcare system now, though.
Yeah, basically.
I think Empire worked. I think Empire worked because it made you believe that the characters could be fallible and they could lose, even if it's just illusory, right? And not in a if you strike me down, I shall be more powerful
than you ever believed.
Yeah. You're talking Empire, the Petal Throne, right? Techie Mill.
No, Empire Strikes Back that you were
Empire Strikes Back. Okay.
Yeah, because you felt that the characters were flawed, that they could lose, that they could get to a low point, and then they would have to come back from that, and that makes the coming back from it more heroic. It raises the stakes. It gives you a sense that it could go wrong. So that's that's where it works. I mean,
the classic 3-act structure. The second act, your characters in the tree, you throw rocks at them, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole original Star Wars trilogy was very much based on Campbell's hero's journey, which I don't actually rate that much, but for that kind of mythopoetic, archetypical story, it works really well. But you say that the modern games are concentrated on story, and yet they eliminate those elements that make for good story.
Yes, now they are. Yes.
Well, now they have dungeons. They put out the first wheelchair accessible dungeon.
Yes.
And
no, they didn't.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing.
You can buy figures now that are in wheelchairs to paint and use in your Dungeons and Dragons game.
I have a question. When was the last time you saw a dungeon with a wheelchair ramp? I'm sorry. I've yet to see a Warhammer video game where it's like you could be a paladin, you could be the fighter, and you can also be Professor X. I hope they have ramps.
I just have a question.
Go for it, Keith.
And only from people I know who are disabled or have had horrible accidents and things like that. They kind of don't want to be reminded that they're sitting in one of these chairs for the rest of their life. When they play a game like this, they don't want to be reminded. I think that's just, I could be wrong, man.
You're not
way off.
I've been in a few discussions about this recently, including some discussions with disabled people, and for most of them, they don't want, like you said, they don't want to be reminded of their infirmity and so on. They want to play someone who is more capable.
Right.
I have mental health issues. I wouldn't really want to play a character who has those same issues because they would never go out adventuring or do anything. But I've been in some discussions about this recently, and it's the shift, I think, is not so much from game to narrative. It's more that it's different power fantasies. So when you played games in the old days, the power fantasy was overcoming and becoming more powerful, collecting more treasure, more gear, overcoming. Now, the power fantasy seems to be that people want to self-insert themselves.
Yeah.
So they want to put themselves into the game and to be validated for all of their issues and problems and disabilities and whatever, rather than escaping them.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again. I think finally we have another man who's somewhat a myth and a legend. Welcome, Gary.
It's Gary.
It's Gary.
Gary, this is Grim. Gary, we met a couple weeks ago.
We've met. Yeah.
If I may, I would say that the power structure, it's been inverted. So you have your traditional power structure with that being at the top, like pyramid scheme, but obviously not. But it's been inverted. So now you have the face that is your chronic victimhood, and that's what everyone aspires to. And I don't understand how the self-insertion is such a fascinating thing, but I think it's just the easy thing. It's the tangible thing. I know myself, so I'll do myself. And that's what, like, psychologically, I think it's just laziness.
It lacks imagination. Total lack of creativity. And the other thing is, I'm not sure the people doing that actually buy the products, because you see the sales slumping hard. Like they cry about it on Twitter, but they don't go out and support it or play. They just say they do because it's some badge now.
Yes.
Though woke Kickstarters tend to do pretty well as a kind of virtue signal, a low effort virtue signal, I think.
And we're seeing those now.
Yeah. But since I've brought that up, now is probably a good time to explain something. Right? I am virulently left-wing. So the idea that they're cancelling me because I'm a conservative or far-right, well, it's just absurd. I've been left-wing my entire life since Thatcher's day. So that it just doesn't wash with me. Like you're saying about the hierarchies, right? So I'm in the sort of left. I'm way down in the left libertarian quadrant of the political compass, and it's a fundamental thing, I believe, in most left-wing philosophy, that you're anti-hierarchical. So you want to destroy the hierarchy, not invert it.
It's very anti-libertarian in general, obviously, because it's for as little authority as humanly possible. Therefore, the concept of hierarchy, whether it's your victimhood at the top or bottom or whatever they want to be, then all that it comes down to at its very, very core is cultural Marxism. And that is when top down, bottom up, inside out. And at the point now, we're inside out. And that's one thing that people don't understand. Like, why is everything crazy? Because it's being gutted on purpose. Purpose.
You're going to trigger people by mentioning cultural Marxism, because people like to say people like to say that's people like to say that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I know they do, and I know people that are smarter than them. They're some of my best friends.
It's not. It was an attempt to apply Marxist analytical perspectives to media and culture, rather than the sort of purely materialistic sort of Marx and Engels view, economics and so on. So it kind of ties into the idea of false consciousness, in that people don't know what's good for them, which I find a bit patronizing.
I mean, the easiest way to explain it to someone is to read Rules for Radicals. And but the thing about that book is that you can use it to take down corruption as well. So that's ultimately why Project Veritas is suing Twitter.
Yeah, it's what I was kind of hinting at earlier. You know, if you try and view reality through a lens, you're always going to find something you can problematize. You can always twist something around to have it be bad from that perspective. So if you
I get it. The lack of objectivity is what makes a lot of things unnecessarily complicated.
Right, and then you got social media, so it dials it up to 11. You know,
Yeah.
these echo chambers, and
I mean,
then they create these sock puppet accounts. You have one person with 20 little Twitters that attack you all day long.
and
Well,
part
and
of the problem with social media, I think, is so like I got accused of all these things. You try to argue back, you try to present your counterpoint, your actual point of view, but they've all already preemptively blocked you.
Yep.
Anyone who follows you, anyone who mentions your name, discussion of the topic is not allowed on any forum. You never get a right of reply. You never get to face your accusers.
I don't think they've heard the word discourse. They don't know what that means.
But Grim, at the same time, you don't even have to get the reply off for defense. If you even come and talk to them with a respectful type of logic to disputing their facts or the way they're trying to twist their narrative, they're going to block you anyways or put on that block bot. Because anything that goes outside of what they're imagining is their reality. It's like their truth. It's at this point now that if you even use the slightest bit of something that makes sense, they just pretend you don't exist. The same way you're trying to.
I know what you're saying, Stephen, and it's basically the internet version of la 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 la.
There you go.
Thank you, Gary, for summing that up. Good morning.
Very mature.
I hope we get that clipped.
I will get that clipped, and I will splice it with "Come Hard."
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. With Keith saying "Come Hard," not you, Keith, the other Keith, Black Keith.
We were all serious.
We just ran into this yesterday.
Just
well,
dragged
we had
it down
this
to 4-year-olds.
One at a time.
Well, yeah, 4-year-old level. That's me. I'm toddler Gary. We had a run in with some people like that yesterday. Oh God, fuck you, Stephen. We had a run in with someone like that yesterday, and the thing that amazes me with this cult mindset is the whole "you owe me a fucking answer, answer me," even though I don't really care what your answer is.
Well, they want the answer to be "you're right, I'm sorry."
Yeah, Stephanie, because you know our friend Stephanie, who watches a lot of our shows, she got hit because she had the rebellion shirt on. And she's such a sweetheart. Mm-hmm. And somebody says, like, "Is this you?" And slaps a photo of her from Twitter. And another guy, yesterday, YOLO brother or whatever his name is, just met him. They're like, "You're not answering my question." And this is the mindset of these people. You owe them something.
But you don't. And that's important to remember. Is you know them absolutely nothing.
Exactly. And that's the kind of people that attack you, Grim. It's this mindset that they have the right think, how dare you? And then whatever it is that they're equivocating or fighting against, you better answer their questions and apologize. Apologize.
Once you do that, once you bend a knee, you're done.
Yeah, they
don't accept the apology anyway.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Any apology, whether just for a partial or not, they will automatically take it as a full apology. They will load that gun and then come after you a lot faster.
And keep looking for more shit.
Yeah.
So I think there's two important aspects that we touched on before here. Is this prioritization of personal experience and this idea that the personal is political. So if I'm having an abstract intellectual rationalist discussion about a topic, they will deliberately take it personally as a kind of justification for ignoring me, even though I'm talking in terms of statistics or long-established philosophical principles or legal principles like presumption of innocence or whatever. They don't care, right? They're looking for some reason to be so absolutely enraged that they can just ignore everything that you say.
Well, yeah, it's the erasure of free thought, and they set up all the answers ahead of time. So if you go out of that, you're automatically wrong, and there's no way you can ever express a difference or counterpoint because this is the answer. You cannot go against it. But their answer changes every other month, and you could get canceled for not having like the right. What you once said is now wrong. You could get canceled when it changes a month later, and that's happened multiple times.
Hang on. One of the things I've noticed too is it's okay. I went through the same panic eras that Grim did. You know, I remember the vampire panic. I definitely grew up with the whole D&D panic because, here I am I'm 10 or 11 years old. I'm playing D&D, and every fucking Christian mom out there who has heard all the horror stories about the gateway to Satanism is getting up my ass or getting up my friend's ass or not allowing them to play with me, or they're talking to my parents trying to get them to stop me from playing it and all this other stuff. And the deal is, it's like back then, all that shit was, D&D was a niche product. Role-playing game was kind of a niche product. Not every single person played that stuff. It didn't really start finding a bigger audience until the 90s. But the thing is, it's like even back then they were already shitting on it, and even back then TSR, who was the company who ran it at the time, was already kind of bending the knee, because they were one edition they brought out, they actually changed the names of all the demons and the devils into Tanari and Batazu in order to appease the religious right, in order to get the heat off of them. But for the most part, all the people who were speaking out against those products were, kind of considered to be kooks, or, just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. But
T-shirt, check private chat, please.
Yes. What?
Should we wind the clock on a bit then? So I was talking, where I was talking there, it's about 2012, 2013. I didn't really comprehend what was happening. It didn't make any sense to me. I figured I could just ignore it and it would go away. It wasn't too serious, even with all those threats and things. I've been on the internet since it was dial in with a 2600 baud modem onto a bulletin board. I don't take internet threats seriously. I think most of them are just jokes. So that didn't really bother me then. We get into 2014, and that's when Gamergate started, I think in September.
Yeah.
Right? Now, obviously, because I have been fighting against censorship and moral panics my entire life, pretty much, I see this going on. Now, I'd actually supported Zoe Quinn, who was kind of like the Archduke Ferdinand of the whole thing in the past. When she was mugged, I sent a bit of money. I spammed links to Depression Quest around because that's one of my mental health issues. I think it does help people kind of understand what it's like to struggle with that. I wouldn't say I was a fan, but I was supportive at least. And then all of this stuff came out. And to start with, I didn't pay that much attention to it. I went into one of the IRC chats they were having at the time about it, and I thought, oh, this is just a pointless fuss over someone's sexual history. Yeah, it doesn't bother me too much. I read the Zoe post, and I thought, yeah, this poor dude, basically, he's been in an abusive relationship. It's a shame he's not a woman, or people would be supporting him. Which is maybe a crude way of putting it, but I think most people would recognize that if the genders had been reversed, he'd have got a lot more sympathy and support. And Zoe wouldn't have got much sympathy and support. But then the corruption side started to come out, and it started to intermingle with these lensed critiques of computer games and everything. And so I saw a repeat of the Satanic Panic, the Vampire Panic, the Comics Panic, all of these previous panics. And so obviously I was going to be on the side of the gamers, and it didn't seem at all difficult to me to understand that consumer media should advocate for the consumers. It shouldn't be propagandizing to them. It shouldn't be demonizing them. To me, that was obvious. This was just a rerun. But that's when it really hit me quite how different everything was. I mean, people had still been attacking me in the interim period, going through everything that I'd ever published with a fine-tooth comb for anything that they could problematize. But that was just kind of like a background hum. And then this blew up, and I thought, all right, finally the worm has turned. Yeah, people are fed up with putting up with this bullshit, and we're probably going to come to an end to this. How wrong I was. But through my involvement in Gamergate, I started losing friends and colleagues who were terrified to stand up and say anything. People who I'd thought were friends were attacking me. People I'd stood up for and defended as this went along, started disowning and moving away, because the false story that this was some kind of misogynistic, hateful, harassing spasm had more legs to it and was the only story that got in the media. And even people who'd known me for years and should have known that I would never have had anything to do with any movement that was anything like that, still somehow swallowed the narrative, or privately they would say, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but I can't, it'll ruin my business. I'll get cancelled, though we didn't say cancelled back then. It was just really drastic and worse than the petitions and so on that I'd had against me before and the threats that I'd had against me before. But what was really impactful was that sense of betrayal, that all the people that I had fought alongside against the evangelical right, trying to paint us all as satanic child murderers or blood drinking weirdo fetishists, or who had fought alongside, like the computer game industry fought.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No,
I'm more of a bath salts man myself. I go around downtown once in a while, have a couple, and eat some faces. That's how you do it down here now.
I do whippets.
Well, this is something, Grim, that we talk about a lot, Keith and I. I wish he could have been here today, but he had a family emergency. We talk about it all the time because we're politically opposed, but we get along really well because we focus more on the socio-political stuff and involving thinking, the theoretical aspects of how to live in this world. And so therefore we find his liberalism and my conservatism fall in line with each other, which is free speech. I want to be able to speak freely with liberty and not have other people telling me what I can or cannot do, what I cannot say. And this is what you ran into, which is this wall. It's this wall of hatred of anybody who doesn't accept that groupthink, that way of thinking. And when you start getting into the way you think as to what your politics are, there's something fucking wrong.
Yeah.
And because, as a military veteran, I didn't give a shit what anybody's political persuasion was. I served because I wanted to defend people's right to have that thought. I've got friends that are, I'm atheist, but I love my religious friends. What I don't like is when my religious friends try to dictate what I get to think or do. And it's like, you really need to drop that. And that's where it gets into, instead of political, socio-political avenues that involve that religious right. Well, now we've got this other group of people who use the old religious right way of attacking free speech,
Gary,
and now they're doing it.
Gary.
Yeah.
It's not new and it's not different. These are all progressive people.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's the 80s. In the 80s, we saw it when, when we saw Dee Snider and Frank Zappa sit before a Senate subcommittee and have to explain to them about fucking liberty, you knew something was wrong, because the religious right is...
There were progressives and typical religious right.
They were progressives. Progressives are often some of the worst fucking people and sinners when it comes to this liberty.
They are. They literally are. And it's not an all left thing. There are many, many progressives on the right. The Bushes are a perfect example. They're frogs through and through, and no one wants to have that conversation. And it's insane to me as a
stop talking about it. I don't want to hear you. La 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 la.
I should have mentioned the PMRC, because I guess it's because it's an American thing. It wasn't as impactful to me, but I think as a sort of history of liberty and freedom, free expression, it is hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like the way the computer game industry banded together and fought back against Jack Thompson, the music industry banded together and fought against these small C conservative reactionary people. But then with Gamergate, suddenly, like, the killer was in the house. It wasn't an outsider who was fucking things up for you anymore. It was people within your industry, within your friendship groups, and so on,
secretly doing it too.
Yeah, often
hiding.
That comes back down to top down, bottom up, inside out, and it's all on purpose.
So this was where it really came home to me quite how serious this was, and it was very personally devastating to be abandoned by so many people that you'd fought with and you'd fought for in these battles, people you'd spoken up for and defended, suddenly were distancing themselves from you, and they weren't standing up for the principles that you shared. It's hard to explain just how terrifying that is. It's like being caught in an earthquake where suddenly everything's collapsing all around you. There's nothing you can rely on. Nobody's got your back. You feel utterly alone. And all the harassment from all that previous stuff all came back. Everything I had ever said or done that someone could reframe as being problematic came back. The hate mail started up again. The few bits of freelancing that I was doing all dried up. Lots of friends abandoned me, and that culminated in a suicide attempt. And again, this is at the instigation of these people who like to characterize themselves as caring about people with disabilities and wanting to shield them and so on. And they
use
were
this as a billboard. They don't even care. They just use them as a billboard, especially when it comes to their months. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's differently abled month. Oh, great! Let's all get on the wheelchair roller coaster at Warhammer Land.
Yeah, they parade them all around in front of the camera and show, look, look, look. And then as soon as they're done, they take them out behind the shed and shoot them in the back of the head.
That has not happened. Yeah. What I don't know where you live, but that does not happen here.
So
that's crazy.
It came to the point where some guys I really valued as friends who ran a company, I won't say which one, sort of en masse abandoned me, stopped talking to me, blocked me, and these are people that I'd gone to the wall to defend before in the past, and suddenly, you know, all of that friendship, all of that social capital I'd built up with them didn't count for anything. So I found myself drunk, fully clothed, sitting in the bath with a razor blade to my wrist, making practice cuts. And who was it who came to my rescue? It wasn't these woke activists or, you know, these people who profess how much they care. It was the shitlords of Gamergate who realized that I'd suddenly gone silent and my last few messages had sounded off, and so they called the police locally, internationally, to get a wellness check on me. They bombarded my partner with messages until she came to check on me. She had to break down the bathroom door. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional.
I want you to look at the message Toxic just sent underneath you, Grim, because there are people, and Ord's is a good dude too, that I'll introduce you him later, but there are people, even when you're telling your story now, that are glad you failed, because I think you're a good man at heart, and no one should make you or take away your life from you.
Yeah.
You can be emotional, sir. I believe it's all good.
I'm English. We're not supposed to.
Bullshit.
Stiff upper lip, old man.
Exactly. But so yeah, it was the shitlords that came to my rescue. The kind of people that post offensive memes, and you know, it was them that cared enough to find out what was going on with me and effectively saved my life, because I was absolutely ready to do it. I just had enough. I don't know how to express how absolutely isolating it was. And how utterly worthless it makes you feel, how much it makes you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much confidence you have in your own ideals and principles. That much sort of concentrated venom, you can't help but doubt yourself.
But Grim, I would like to relate with this too, because I haven't experienced to the same extent you two, but I've had experienced people with that same type of mindset, and it puts you on that road where you're trying to figure out what you did wrong, what the next day is going to bring. It brings that anxiety, that you know, that tension in your chest, like a horror movie, you're waiting for that head to get chopped off when you're younger, and it doesn't go away. And then it feeds on the other traumas you've had in your life, whether from being a kid in school or something like this, like a car accident, a bully always beating you up. And it haunts you, like not just like your shadow following you, it's haunting you around your neck, around your heart, around your brain. And you can't help but just want to cry and break down. And it's brutal, man. I understand. It's not good.
And you're talking about that, the bullying. I was horrendously bullied when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I was kicked in the balls practically every lunchtime for 3 years.
Same.
By some guys who also nearly killed a friend of mine by hanging him from his school tie from a tree.
Whoa,
Yeah,
Jesus.
it was bad. And my solace, my safe space was games and fiction. And now that community felt like it was being taken away from me. You know, this was my tribe, my people who I had. You know, like I say, I'd gone out on a limb to defend people and back them up, and it wasn't reciprocated. I mean, you don't do good things for people with the expectation that they will pay you back, but there is an unspoken social contract. You know, that I've got your back, you have mine. It's something you shouldn't need to say. It's something you shouldn't need to get down on paper, but it just didn't happen, and that's always been the absolute worst aspect of it for me.
Yeah.
And so word got out that I'd done this, and the hate mail didn't go away. It intensified. So again, all these, I mean, some of it was going to be trolls, but there were enough people who were willing to put their name and their internet identity behind it that it wasn't just trolls. So I couldn't dismiss it like I had before during the petitions. This is people saying, "Oh, you can't even kill yourself," right? Was one message that stuck with me.
God.
And I got sent a razor blade in the post.
Oh,
Jesus.
You're kidding me.
come on.
No, these people don't understand when they do shit like that. I don't think they understand the ramifications. To them, it's almost like a game, I think.
Well, sociopathy plays a huge part in this shit. They don't have a conscience.
That's it.
And anybody that would do something like that lacks basic human decency.
Yeah.
So, you know, God, I'm glad you failed, man. That's all I know. And I'm glad we met you.
Yeah.
Is my mic fixed?
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds better.
now.
Yep.
I apologize.
Can't hear you. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you, dude. What'd you say?
Other than Gary's dick in his ear, Grim, showing emotion and sharing this stuff is not only hard, but it's also brave, because it's still, like you were explaining when we started this, about how you have to go into that toolbox and find things to create characters to overcome. You're overcoming your own character by experiencing the stuff that still haunts you, by sharing it. So I got to say thank you, just from that retrospect, that you're willing to share those things about you with random strangers, for God's sakes.
It's not easy, but I think it's important, especially because this side of things hasn't been told. Right, the same people who were seemingly overjoyed. There were exceptions. I don't want to say it's everybody was being horrendous to me. There were people on the other side that did reach out. So yeah, there's good eggs everywhere. But the majority of it wasn't. But these are the same people who were broadcasting even the slightest bit of harassment directed the other way, usually by completely anonymous trolls, something that I wouldn't have taken seriously. You know, they're trumpeting that to the rooftops, but they absolutely ignored what happened to me and to some other people like me who went through similar things at the time. it was just completely ignored. Now, I know my rational brain says that we shouldn't necessarily upbraid people for hypocrisy, because to be a hypocrite, you have to try and do the right thing, but fail. So at least they're trying. But at the same time, I cannot get past it. Hypocrisy just really, really gets to me. I can't stand it. It drives me crazy.
It should drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just so blatant.
Mm-hmm.
That was hard to cope with. It's like, what about me? Don't I matter? Sure, we disagree, but surely you don't actually want me dead. But apparently they did. Yes, it's just absolutely horrendous. And it's primarily that sense of abandonment. And then all the bullshit around it is just like rubbing salt into the wound.
It is.
I mean, later.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, it's got to kill you that people choose self-preservation.
Yeah.
Agenda over friendship. You know,
I don't think there is anything particularly special about me, but I don't do that. I will take the hit to stand up for a principle or to back up a friend, and yet there just wasn't returned.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, ethics really, yeah, because I've seen it as well personally. Who will stand up for you and who will not? And I've had people in my actual personal life do that. I had a tremendously rough period in 2012 when two people I worked with stole close to about $40,000 from me and almost destroyed my career over it. And I was trying to take care of my kid because I was a single dad caring for a small child. And I'm like, I got to make sure there's a roof over my head. And by the actions of two people, I found there are two other people in my life who weren't going to stand with me to deal with it. And it broke my heart. Because I was already suffering from depression from my PTSD. And it got really bad, and I went silent like you did. I'm not suicidal for the most part. I would rather live and punish people that don't like me because I'm kind of an asshole.
And you do it every day.
I do it every day. And I've been attacked by cancel culture many times, including recently. And my response, and Steven heard my response, I don't give a flying fuck what anybody thinks of me. I stopped being concerned with that because I know these people exist out there. I've seen it firsthand that will turn on you in the drop of a hat.
Yeah. You should have seen Gary after they canceled the McRib. It was brutal for all of us.
It was really tough. No, don't make light of it. I don't care about the McRib.
So I mean that was kind of the peak of it. Gamergate petered out, but I lost a lot through standing up for what I thought was true there, and it's been still going on at a kind of much lower level while I've been trying to rebuild my audience and my reputation without compromising my principles. I think I'm surrounded by better people now for the most part, or people who at least know how to disagree with someone without calling them Satan. There was one last incident I want to really talk about before we move to any questions or anything. I will name names, but it's not this person's fault. So I want to make that clear. I don't want anybody to go after them. So if you've been aware of D&D in particular in the more modern era, they had a community manager, Satine Phoenix.
Oh yeah,
she's a friend of mine going way back. I love her to bits. She's an absolutely lovely person. She used to do the D&D with porn stars thing with Zach Smith and some other people when I was on The Escapist and everything. she had a really hard time kind of getting out of the adult industry and repairing her own reputation. She came under a lot of attack from so-called progressives because of her sex work and so on. And I really went to the wall to defend her from these attacks. Just because it was wrong to start with, and then because we became friends. But this tactic that they have now is that they go after your friends and they try to pressure them through back channels into no longer having anything to do with you and saying the most horrible things about you, true or not.
Well, they also threaten your friends.
That sounds exactly like the Say No to Rage stuff that we were covering before earlier, because they did that to him, and he had to get to the point where he has to keep monitoring his heart now because of the blood pressure and stuff. And it's gone to the point where not even the devs have dev banned him without reasoning, and so they took away his platform.
So they went in hard on Satine through private messages and things. I got to see some of them. I don't blame her at all, because I know how it can absolutely break your soul. All these people just piling on endlessly. And
they do.
And they just want it to stop. And that's where the betrayal takes place. I get you.
Yeah. So she ended up, just for the sake of her own sanity, I think, giving into them. And that's been the lowest point since that suicide attempt.
I was going to ask you earlier, Grim, do you think this is a game of attrition? They just keep grinding and grinding and grinding, and people finally have had enough. They just go. It's easier to give up and go with that thinking than to keep fighting against it.
I find it hard to blame people for cracking under the pressure, because I've cracked under the pressure. You know, I've had my breakdowns and been brought to the brink of destruction by it all. So it's hard to blame anyone, even though I wouldn't do that.
Our brains aren't wired to handle this. Like, the internet is so new that we've never had to develop any coping mechanisms to deal with just a mob of random faceless people coming after you. Before somebody had a problem, they had to come up to your face and tell you. And, usually then it would be one or two people and you could tell them to screw off, and it was the end. Now,
that's not entirely true. Mob rule was not a new thing.
It's not the randos that bother me, because I've been on the internet so long. I think I've got a pretty accurate troll radar. So if you get a death threat from Big Dick 765, you don't really care.
I know Dick. He's a wonderful troll. He loves the goats and the bridges. He does. He just eats butter, Crisco, and a deep fryer.
Yeah. That's not all he uses, but
you can write that off. It doesn't mean anything. But when it's someone in the industry, or it's someone that or it's someone who has a consistent online entity and identity, and that you take more seriously. You take that more to heart than just some stupid comment by some rando. So
that would be much harder.
Yeah, so I think I've actually got pretty good internet survival skills from kind of growing up with the internet. But you look at the other side, and they take random insults seriously and treat them as if they are serious, while ignoring any inconvenient threats from people. And it's been of surprisingly little comfort that many of the people who've attacked me over the years have since been outed as sex pests and so on, because I'm already cancelled, and the fact that the people that orchestrated that have been outed doesn't really make any difference.
Well, isn't that what it's coming out to now? All the people that are, championing this, they're the ones who are the worst. Like, they're the worst offenders, and that's probably why they're doing it. They want to hide in the mob so they don't get hit next, because they know
they
it'll
like
be worse.
Moving like locusts is what they like doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So look at this guy. Don't look at what I'm doing.
Correct.
And they're building up a degree of kind of social credit in these activist circles. so that they're somewhat insulated from being attacked. Because people are
moving
perhaps,
birds, safety in numbers. That's always been a classic statement. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if we want to move to a few questions or something, because I can hang around a bit longer, I just want to kind of cap this by saying that you can survive this happening. You can uncancel yourself. It just takes a long time. And pay more attention to the people who have good and positive things to say to you. It's difficult. It goes against human psychology. We tend to fixate on the bad. But if you, and I'm not saying construct an echo chamber, because that's a bad idea too, but just weight the positive things that people say. Like, I've read all the nice comments that people have said that have come up on the screen. And I appreciate them all. I'm terrible at taking compliments.
We all are, Grim, but a lot of this community, like a lot of these people here, you'll meet some of the nicest and most loyal people here if you give them a chance.
Yeah, a few people in the chat. Yeah, well, some of the people in chat also are YouTubers themselves. We're friends with a lot of these guys, and the fact is we've created a group, and you can have faith in one thing with our group. It's not an echo chamber because we don't all agree politically or sociopolitically.
For sure.
But we all come to understand one thing is that there is an evil in the world, and it represents itself as a saint. And that is cancel culture. Cancel culture acts like it's the saint of the world, and you need it in order to save yourself and everything. And we reject it wholeheartedly.
It's a new religion.
It is.
That's what it's come down to.
I was just going to say it bears all the marks of a cult. It really.
And I'm so glad, Geek Time, you said it instead of Yeti.
Oh no, I was Yeti said it first, but I was going to say the same.
No. We didn't hear him.
Well, they have rules, and they have original sin. They have all the markings, and you cannot go against otherwise you are depersoned. You're blasphemy.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and it's getting out of control. But people are, I don't know, they're just bowing down to it.
Well, eventually people are getting sick of it. You're seeing more groups like us rising up, and we're getting more support and growing bigger because we're absolutely rejecting it, and we're trying to become, as a group, a bulwark against it for all of our fellow free thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
I think
we support free thinking.
We have an important question from Duz for you quickly.
Oh, but I was just going to say.
Go ahead, Grim. Yeah.
I think that it's the quote from Milton that they used in The Crow, isn't it? It's abashed the devil stood and felt how awful goodness is.
Yeah.
But the righteous or the self-righteous are awful people.
The self-righteous are absolute fucking bastards. And what was the question you were talking about, Stephen?
That's right under Grim right now. I think you have a fan from Duzzy.
Okay.
Do I play Fortnite? I have dabbled, but I find the way it plays annoying. And I was interested in Fortnite when it was going to be that fort building zombie survival game, and I'm not so interested in PvP. So
I kind of find that right in the. I find that right in the same garden as when I was like talking to somebody about being in the military, and then the person goes, "You ever play Call of Duty?" And then I played Call of Duty, and I was like, "Yeah, this is fucking awesome."
I've got to take
Call
off
of Duty
now.
the game or Call of Duty the never mind.
The game.
Oh shit! Geode found me. No one tell him about the video.
Oh,
sorry, was Yeti trying to go or something?
Yeti
needs
I
to
have
go.
to take off, and I just want to say it was a pleasure meeting you and talking with you, and absolutely hope to do this again. And thank you, Fat Steven, for having me on.
Thank you for rolling out of bed.
And just so everybody understands, this is molting season for Yeti, so he's got to go and shed some of that disgustingly crusty fur around his crotch.
he's
in
gonna go
that,
rub on some rocks.
Yeah, he has that Wampa costume on so long that the body sweat. And
It's
hair.
it's now melded with his skin.
He
I
looks
love
like a
you, Yeti. I'll
Tauntaun.
talk to you later, buddy.
Okay, see you guys later.
Yeti.
Bye bye, Tauntaun. You smell worse on the outside.
I missed that question about TSR or something.
There you go. Oh wait, is that the right one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the people who were alive for that in the 70s and 80s have a fundamentally different outlook than people who grew up after it.
Oh yeah, I was right there. All my
Me
best
too.
friends. I was talking to T-shirt about it last night that I hated D&D. I fucking hated it, but all my friends played it. So if I wanted to hang out with my friends, I had to play it. So what I would do is get killed really quickly so I could sit and drink beer with my mates and while they played some stupid game I couldn't stand.
It didn't take long back then. It's like,
nope.
Walk into a pit trap,
couple
die.
of roll of the die, and I was fucking dead. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, oh damn.
I had a wizard in Red Box Basic D&D who got killed by the carrion crawler at the first encounter in the dungeon.
Oh shit! The paralyzing tentacles.
Wait, I like how YetiCast leaves. He's like, I get ready for a show, but he has no problems throwing his channel link in there one more time in the chat.
Well, he's a Yeti.
Oh, before I leave, I better self-promote. Fuck you, Yeti.
This is a quick disclaimer. Putin, this is about Grim. I don't care about your personal bias with Geeks and Gamers. Leave it out of my chat. I've told you 3 times. You're timed out now. Have some respect, please. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Oh, jeez. Yeah.
And if anyone in the chat has questions for Grim or on the panel, let's do it now before he blocks all of us on the internet forever.
I mean, it doesn't have to be about my
Anything.
personal experience. If it's something you just want my opinion on for whatever reason, God knows why.
Actually, as I said, I'm a big fanboy, but I have actually found that your historical patronage posts are really good too. So I'm a historian. Gary's a historian, and evidently you've got a bit of a history background.
That's how
well.
T-shirt and I became friends. Is our love of history.
Yeah, I've always been interested in history, mostly pre-Christian European history. I also studied politics. I ended up not going to university for various reasons, but I've kept up my reading and so on these topics. So I like to think I've got a good perspective on these things.
Well, Grim, and being well versed in history.
Look! Looks like you have a fan. Look, he's come back. You'll get to love Toxic Man Flu. He does this all the time, but he's a good dude. He is. But now he's Big Dick.
Yeah, well, Big Dick 765. It's because when it comes to dick pics, it's better to give than to receive.
There you go.
I think his name is actually Big Dick 76 Lies, because I don't think it's really a big dick.
What we ought to do is send him a bunch of dick pics, but make him pictures of like Richard Nixon, Richard Burton,
Richard Gere and the Gerbil.
Richard Gere.
And then
Army.
you have a question from Jester of Sin.
How about another this one?
Favorite version of D&D. See, I didn't come up on D&D. The UK role-playing scene is pretty different, and certainly was pretty different. I came up on Warhammer, Dragon Warriors, and MERP, which was the kind of light version of Rollmaster that was the old Lord of the Rings game. So I didn't actually encounter D&D until about 3 years into my gaming career. It wasn't until I got to secondary school that I ran into someone who played D&D, and I wasn't impressed. It must be said, but I understand the nostalgia appeal and the importance of D&D. Of the editions, I think, despite the amount of crunch involved, I think 3rd edition, 3.5 editions, my favorite, because it's the most adaptable and the most amenable to house ruling and doing things that can change the tone and feel of the game. 5th edition's okay. It's just too hard to kill people.
Yes, way too hard.
Big Dick has a question too.
It's too hard to create a sense of threat. Favorite sci-fi or fantasy book series? I don't tend to like fantasy books, even though I don't mind fantasy games.
I'm with you on that.
It's a very restricted genre for the most part, so I mean, my favorite science fiction series of books is those collections of short stories that Harlan Ellison edited. So the Dangerous Vision stories. I just think they're a total benchmark for modern science fiction as a whole. I think it's like a foundational text.
Have you ever read the Philip K. Dick books?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I like him too, but I definitely prefer the way Harlan Ellison would poke at people. So,
Harlan was sardonic.
Yeah. When it comes to fantasy, I tend to prefer things that are a bit more offbeat, weird. So I like China Mayville's books set in New Crobuzon. So Perdido Street Station, The Scar, Iron Council, those are really good. Or sort of grimmer, darker fantasy where the magic is lower level and kind of fades into the background.
Black Company.
Yeah.
I mean,
all the big dicks are coming out now. Oh my god!
Now, see, I'm with him on that. I could never get into like Pratchett and Wheel of Time and all that shit. It just did not interest me.
I don't mind Pratchett. I think because he's similar to Douglas Adams in a lot of ways. The humor is first and foremost, and he plays around with and mocks the fantasy cliches. So that makes it work for me better. And I met Pratchett a couple of times. He was a thoroughly nice chap.
I'm not gonna lie, I still like reading some of Pratchett's books. He has his good moments. I like the way he delivers his characters. I do like the Wheel of Time, even though it's 25 books now, all trying to cross the desert right now. I like the way it's going. Sword of Truth, Wizard's First Rule is still my utmost favorite book when it comes to fantasy because I love Zed and his crazy, perverted old man wizard ways. It's perfect.
I mentioned Ill-Earth before. I quite like that, Stephen Donaldson's series. But again, it's not regular fantasy. It's weird. Fantasy or 40k, Wade Nation?
I'm going to go with orcs myself. Da orcs.
Well, he just got canceled for saying orcs.
Disease actually mentions Asimov because I was also a big fan growing up. And by the way, I'm supposing that we grew up close to the same time. I was a kid in the 70s and a teen in the late 70s going into the 80s.
Bit younger than you, I think. I'm 45.
Yeah.
I had a couple of years on you.
Wade wants to know why is that? I think related to his other question, best Warhammer army to use for a new fan.
Because for a new fan, I don't know. I mean, fantasy, I always like the Skaven, the rat people, because they move fast and they have all this bizarre, weird equipment and so on. So I like them. 40k, everyone likes Space Marines.
Yeah.
I didn't find them particularly engaging. I liked the Eldar. And I wish the Dark Eldar had been around when I was playing 40k because they're kind of my vibe. I did have an orc army, but the trouble with orcs in 40k when I was playing was like the game starts and then half your army kills itself, another half teleports away into the warp. The rest of them go insane. You never know what's going to happen.
Oh man, that's awesome. I have a question for you that's kind of unrelated. What makes you happy, Grim?
Serotonin.
All right, I will eventually find a way to get both those big dicks after you. But like seriously, like when you're like not online, you're not doing your stuff. Like, what's the one thing you cherish the most that makes you happy? Like even on a bad day. Masturbating.
That's difficult. Momentarily,
just a little.
Well, I have pretty severe clinical depression, so it's hard to get any real happiness out of anything. It's like getting blood from a stone. Yeah. I'm just happy if I don't feel down. It sounds terrible.
Well, let's put the word personal
human.
Satisfaction instead. Yeah. Let's use that.
Eating a good spicy meal. Napping, curling up with my cats. We got 3 of them now.
So you're a man of pussy.
Indeed. Good discussions and non-hostile arguments.
I can respect that. That's a good one.
Nothing quite like a healthy debate.
Yeah.
Yes, or a mass debate, as the disease is saying.
Well, Does is a master debater, so
Yes.
I take most of my rings off for it, especially the chunky one. But that one has a naked lady on it, so that's that one stays on.
There's nothing quite like a giant ring slamming into your taint.
I am sorry. I am so sorry.
No, you're not sorry. Fuck you.
Thank you for being on our show, Gary. It's time for you to go now. Go take your meds.
Thank you, Cam. Cam today ran into our channel. They've not only subbed to you, Graham, they've also subbed to us. So it looks like you have just made a new fan today.
Wow.
You made a lot of new fans today.
Yes, definitely.
When you do keep the rings on, though, does lotion get stuck under the rings between the fingers, and does it get that weird smell?
Oh, that's an okay one. Fuck you.
Well, you get lotion and dead skin under the ring, so you have to scrape it out every now and again.
Oh man!
Why do you keep wet wipes next to your bed?
Well, Amber is horrified and blushing, so that's good. Ords wants to give you a compliment. He's not hitting on you. His hair is amazing. His beard is amazing. His accent is amazing. Like super Ords, man. If he slides into your DMs with a picture of a GameCube and Miller Genuine Draft, just block him.
Thank you. I prefer the compliments to come from women, but I'll accept it.
Go ahead, Kate.
What's your favorite band?
I have really eclectic taste, despite dressing like a pound shop Rob Zombie. So I do like Rob Zombie, but unfortunately, the only time I got to see him live back when it was still White Zombie, their whole stage show got stuck in customs, so we didn't get to see the whole thing go off, unfortunately. These days I tend to like sort of edgier electronic influenced music.
Oh yeah.
But my heart is still very much in sort of goth industrial sort of land.
Good stuff.
Used to go to the Electric Ballroom in London quite a lot. Knew one of the DJs. So that was always a good time.
I knew I loved you.
I wanted to point something out because Keith and I lived near where Rob Zombie lives, and it's really weird. What's his name? Brad Pitt too, from this area, and it's really bizarre when you it's weird when you run into Brad Pitt grocery shopping with his family.
Yeah, Rob.
But when you run into Rob Zombie at a Walmart, I give up on his music. I'm like, no, you're a sellout, fucker.
He's living near me. He just moved from Connecticut out where you.
Well, he owns property here in Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah,
right outside.
His films are shit. Unless you watch them in like 5-minute bursts because they're like music videos.
Mm-hmm.
There's no coherence, but visually I find them really interesting.
Yeah, he has a problem with story structure, which frustrates me. But
I think my favorite is Cameo because I loved it when he was wearing that cod piece and dressing up like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
No.
I'll share what
I think that's actually the deGrasse Tyson picture. I think that's actually Lenny Henry dressed as Theopolis P. Wildebeest for comic relief.
But Grim, I don't know how much time you have left, but I do want to say thank you on behalf of the chat and my panelists for giving your time today. Like, I would love to have you back. It doesn't even have to be about you. We can just shoot the shit one day.
It's not about me. Why would I turn up? No. I'm happy to come on and shoot the shit if our time zones intersect. I should go in a minute. Yeah.
Okay. We will close out soon, but we will definitely set up a show called Shitting on Yeti, and we can all just have a good time.
Yeah, because it is every single member's of this panel's favorite pastime is shitting on Yeti. It's just so it brings us all joy. We're so happy because of it. But I wanted to point out something about weird music. In the Army, we'd be going out on a mission, and you'd have guys in the vehicle fucking with their Sony Walkmans. This was back in like 91. And you'd hear all the fucking death metal, the hard rock going, and then you'd find me, the combat medic, sitting over in the corner listening to Peter Gabriel.
I thought you were more of a Spice Girls dude.
No, Peter Gabriel is
back then.
David Bowie and Peter Gabriel is my fucking shit. And
That's not
guys
bad.
would go like, "Why you always listen to that pussy shit?" And I said, "When the shit is hard and heavy in here, and you guys are all stressed, I'm always the calmest fucker in here. Always, because of the music I listen to. It puts me in a zen mode."
Okay.
And that's why I always do it.
All right,
still do it.
Mr. Conway Twitty.
No,
Oh yeah.
no country, fuck country.
So you have to get going soon. And I have one question to close out because I think you deserve a laugh. And Big Dick has the most important question ever.
Some of us don't need penis pumps.
There you
Yeah,
go.
what is a penis pump anyway?
That's what you do with the vacuum when the camera's off, Gary. We all know
try,
this.
Gary. Nice try. We don't buy that.
It uses a vacuum to enlarge and elongate your junk.
Wait a minute. Are you shitting on me, geek? Fuck you. I'm a nice guy. I don't. Fuck you, geek.
Which scary movie was it with Officer Duffy? Like, I told you not to knock on the door when I'm vacuuming.
The first one. First one.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give you the floor if there's anything you want to say, Grim, before we roll out. I'm gonna blow you up. If you want to plug your stuff and where they can find you.
It doesn't feel appropriate somehow, but okay.
I'm sorry. Is it the Big Dick? Oh wait, it's the Big Dick.
It's the plugging stuff that freaked him out.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's like, it got me really big, and then he wanted to plug me.
So my Twitter is @Grimasaur. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/postmortem studios, and the information sort of links the below the video stuff has all my links to everything. If you want to buy my shit, you can go to www.post-mort.com. If you want to continue the discussion, you know, I'm around. Hit me up on social media, and I'm happy to talk over anything.
Graham, I got to ask real quick. Is it better to go through Postmortem Studios, or is it better to buy through Drive-Thru RPG? Because I do a lot of drive-thru.
It's better to buy directly from me. Some of the more sensitive product that I have that I can't risk on Drive-Thru is only available on my site, and I get a bigger percentage. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there it is. Thank you, Amber, for that. And thanks again. I hope you had a good time, and I would love to have you back. Just like you're welcome to the club, man. If you ever want to just join us someday.
Anytime. Yeah, just hit me up if you want me to come on whenever.
You
need to stop talking over your only female panelist. It's terribly sexist.
I didn't talk over her ever. She'll kick my ass. She has spiked shoes. I'm not going to ever piss her off.
And a corset.
All right, I'm going to head off.
All right.
Thanks again to the chat for all the nice things, and thanks for letting me tell my side.
You're always welcome here, man.
You're welcome.
You have a shoulder here whenever you need it.
Thank you.
Amen.
Nice meeting
You're
you.
welcome. Have a good day, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
And everyone in the chat, if you can, give a big thank you to Grim. It was a great discussion today, and I was honored that we were able to have him on. This was awesome. Thank you, Grim. I know you're listening. And thank you to Gary's Penis Pump, aka Hoover Vacuum, who will be sponsored by Salt very shortly.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Did you enjoy this? Did you have a good time?
Oh, yeah.
He's a good man. Other than that, we're going to close out. Your links are all in the description. I know I can't plug every one of you. I'm very disappointing when plugging happens. So,
I prefer you not plug me. Yeah.
is there any shows going on today we need to bring up before we close out? That's the best awkward silence ever. Okay, to the chat, thank you for being here. You can always catch us on the replay. Thank you for your time. Oh, Gary, I was a combat medic too. Airborne and air assault in Africa until in Africa.
They wouldn't let me be a ranger because I snore like a wild fucking animal. And you can't snore and be in the Rangers. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, I remember the story. Other than that, we're closing out. Everyone have a great day. This has been the Cancel Culture Virus, and our featured guest today was Grimasaur, Grim Jim, the Grim. Amazing hat, amazing beard, a bromance in the making for Ord Sport. Take care. As soon as I learn how to press this button. Oh, crap, I'm doing it again.
Just the carrot.